Good evening, everyone. It's a good day today, isn't it? It's a good day to be alive. It's been a beautiful day today. It's supposed to be beautiful tomorrow. So just a few quick announcements, and I'm going to go to the website and show you how to navigate our website to find Barbara's official website and some of the archives as well of these presentations by Barbara O'Neill. So clearly I'll show you how to get there and you can watch them. You can rewind her, go forward, all these kinds of things. Someone left these sunglasses by the camera in the back from last night. So if these belong to you, please come and see me. And again, right here in the middle, on my right here, when we were cleaning up after everyone left, we found this little notebook. So if this belongs to you, let me know. Get through a few of those things. Let's have some fun for just a moment. You're good for that? Okay, let's find out who came from the farthest distance. And I have a gift for you. How many of you are coming from at least 4 hours away? Oh, wow. Okay. How are we going to do this, Steve? This was your idea. How are we going to do this? Coming up here, the microphone, this one. So this is Steve Keaton. He lives down the road, and this was his idea. So Steve, how are we going to solve this problem?
Thank you. Okay, how many's 2,000 miles away?
Oh, wow.
Okay. Jareel, where are you from? Jamil.
Originally from Bangladesh.
No, but where'd you come from to get
now?
here?
New York.
You flew from
Anybody
New York?
further away than New York? Where?
How do we figure that one out?
Yeah.
Do we have two of them?
I think she does have two.
We got it in the mileage count.
Yeah, right. Who's from South Carolina?
Right here.
You came from South Carolina to be here?
Yes.
Okay, so we have two people.
Okay.
I think we can arrange for two gifts.
I think we can.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Well, enjoy. It's illustrated. I like books with pictures. I hope you do as well. Okay, so on the bulletin that you received, hopefully you have one. On the back, not only is the schedule for Barbara and what topic she'll be speaking on today, but also tomorrow morning. Again, we're going to open the doors at 8:30. So if you come any earlier, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to open the doors any earlier than that. We have to get ready. And so on the back of the bulletin is the QR codes. They're like a square barcode. And on there is the website, haydenlakeadventist.org. It's the first one there. And we're going to have it on the screen. And so when you go to haydenadventist.org, or Hayden Lake, Adventist.org, let's hope the technical things work. We have a great video and technical team, but sometimes technology doesn't cooperate. I'm displaying, Dave, my keyboard here to duplicate. See if we can get this to work. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll have Jody come forward till we get the technical things worked out. Jody, can you come and share with us what you offer as our health ministries director? You have plant-based cooking class or several other things, so
Yes.
please.
Okay, so there is a page on the website that is called Health Ministries, and if you go to that page, you will see a schedule of events for the rest of the year. The next event that we're going to host here is March 23, and that is a gardening seminar by Don Trammell, Master Gardener. How many of you tonight are here for the first time tonight? So a few of you
wow.
have not
Okay.
come to any of the others. Wonderful. Well, welcome, welcome. And how many of you have been to every single meeting so far?
Oh,
yeah. Wow. So Master Gardening, March 23. And then we have, after that, we have our plant-based cooking classes in April. We're going to have 4 classes each week, Mondays in April. And then the last week, it's going to be on a Tuesday, because we had a conflict with the kitchen.
And there's a big bonus to that. Jody's serving food.
You get
It's
to
good.
taste the food. So it took me quite a while. When I switched to a plant-based diet, it was about 8 or 9 years ago. It was God who led me to this lifestyle because he knew I needed it because I was so addicted to sugar. And I wanted to give up sugar. And every January, I would try to give up sugar, and I would go for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then I would start eating more sugar than I'd eaten before, and I'd make up for those 2 or 3 weeks.
I think somebody in here knows what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So then when God kind of told me I needed something more, a better relationship with him, and so I saw a video, and actually there was so many miracles happening in my life at that time, but I saw a testimony of a man who was a heroin addict. And when he gave his life to Jesus, God took his heroin addiction away.
Amen.
So I said, Lord, if you can do that for him, you can do that for me, and I want to give up sugar, and I know you can help me, and I know you want me to give it up. And I said, if you will help me, I will do it. And so I had to stop, pray, and walk away. And when I did that, every time I would go away, and it would leave my mind, and I wouldn't think about it anymore. Finally, after several weeks, I never wanted it again. So God is truly in this message. He has power to give each one of you to resist temptation. It's just another temptation. So he has power for you. So then after the cooking, so basically then I wanted to switch my lifestyle. So I started checking all the labels of the food in my pantry and realized that everything I had either sugar, refined grains, trans fats, so I had to throw everything away. And then I didn't know what to eat. I did not know what to eat. So then I just
Salad.
started eating salads, right? And my family was getting really bored of salads. And so I prayed, I'm like, Lord, I just need some good recipes. And then all of a sudden, one by one, I started getting these wonderful recipes. And I've built up over the last 8 years so many wonderful recipes that I want to share with everybody. I want to show you how to cook the new way because it's a whole change from what we're used to. We're used to getting things out of a box. We're used to just dumping things together. This is all from scratch, but it's so much better. So join the cooking classes. Then we have Dr. Joyce Cho coming in September to talk about reversing autoimmune disease. Diseases can be reversed, and it is with your lifestyle. The other thing is, has anyone ever heard of the blue zones? So one of the blue zones is Loma Linda, California. And the reason why is because it's a community of mostly Seventh-day Adventists. And Seventh-day Adventists for the last 120 years have been mostly vegetarian because it's in the Bible that God originally designed man and put him in a garden. So when we get back to that, we live longer. So Loma Linda, California has a pocket of the most centurions of any place in the world. There's 5 locations, and Loma Linda is one of them. So we have a wonderful message here.
All right, let me take a few moments. Thank you, Jody, for sharing with us. While we're getting ready for Barbara to come forward, I want to share with you the website. So you see it here, and this front is where the live stream is, so where it says free event. It says click here for live stream. That's where you can direct people for the live stream. So any event that we're having, you'll be able to watch it wherever you are. In fact, I don't know if you realize this, but we have over 200 people, and many of them from the Philippines, that watch our events in this church. We have a lot of things going on. This is just one of the events that we do on a yearly basis. So if you come here, and I'll go to the home, the main site, you see her face there, and click here for live stream. Then you go down just a little bit. On the left is Barbara O'Neill official website. I had our web developer put that on there to make it easy for you. So if you go to our website, there's not any counterfeits of that. And so you go here, you know you're going to get directly to her website, and then you can order the books if you didn't get the books that you would like and were sold out today, actually yesterday. So if you would like, you can click on that. I'll click on it in just a moment, and it brings up Barbara's website, okay? Barbara O'Neill there. So that's where you see it, and you know you're getting to the official website, and you're not going to something that's counterfeit. Again, we have a Facebook page, so you can click on Facebook here, and they're streamed there as well. We have on the back of the bulletin here, this flyer, there's also a Vimeo page. And if you search on vimeo.com, a Hayden SDA, and just search for that, you'll find the Vimeo page. It has archives there. And we have a YouTube channel as well. And if you're a person, several people have asked me, how can I get access to what Barbara's already presented? Well, not only are we live streaming it, but they're recorded. And so they're on our website. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So you could go at the top. It says sermons in the menu. But if you scroll down, it's a little easier, and it just says sermons there. That's our archive. We just title it sermons. You click on there, and it brings, and you can do searches by title, and you notice there are the 3 presentations, the last 3 days for Barbara O'Neill's presentations. And you can click on that, and it'll bring it up, and you can watch it. And we'll have them on there for a very long time. I don't think we've deleted any for quite a long time. So they'll be there in the future, years on end. So that'll be available to you. You can do searches and by presenter, by series, and so forth. So you can select certain ones like health ministries and things like that. So that's the website. And when you go to our calendar and so forth, and you can see what's coming up. And if you have an interest in something and you can't be here physically, you can watch it online. A lot of people do that. And even during our worship services and all the events that we have over 200 people, or 300 or 400 people that are watching on a regular basis, as I mentioned, from the Philippines and many other countries. It just spreads around. All right. I think that's all. There's the survey. Don't forget that. But we have some special music this evening. I remember tonight. Did you catch that? So Daniela and Bart are going to come forward and sing. And Lucy, Julian, will be playing the piano.
Well, many of you, when you were growing up, probably learned John 3:16 as a favorite text, but by far the most popular passage of Scripture was the 23rd Psalm. And we'd like to share with you tonight a classic of the 23rd Psalm. My music is probably 50 years old. This was written in 1800 and something. So we're going to try to sing for you, "The Lord is my shepherd." My shepherd, I never shall want. For lack of his mercies, my soul shall not pant. In pleasant green pastures, I'll daily abide. He leads me the peaceful still waters beside.
My soul he restoreth, and for his name's sake, the path of true righteousness beats me.
Though I pass through death's dark valley and shade, I will not by evil be ever dismayed. I will not by evil be ever dismayed. The Lord is my shepherd, I never shall want. For thou art my shepherd, and with me alway. Thy rod and thy staff are my comfort and stay. My table thou spreadest in presence of foes. My head thou anointest, my cup overflows. Thy goodness and mercy shall follow me still, while life's earnest duties I'll daily fulfill, till joyous my spirit shall come and dwell evermore in the house of the Lord, and dwell evermore in the house of the Lord. The Lord is my shepherd, I never shall want.
That was a blessing, wasn't it? I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to heaven so I can sing like that and play the piano. I'd like to ask for God's blessing upon you and upon Barbara before we invite her to come up. Can we do that together? Let's pray. Our gracious, patient, and loving Father in heaven, I come to you in the merits of your Son, Jesus Christ. And Father, I ask for your blessing upon this group that is here today. The people that are in this room and downstairs as well, and those watching online. I ask, Lord, for your special blessing upon us in ways, Lord, that we will understand your great sacrifice and your love for us, and that we can indeed trust in God. And I pray, Lord, that you'll be with Barbara O'Neill as she comes forward to share. May your angels surround her and your Holy Spirit guide her in her thoughts and words. And bless us, Father, with attentive ears that we may hear your voice throughout our lives so that we can be ready when Jesus comes to take us to our heavenly home. And this is my prayer, and I offer it with confidence in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Sing one, oh, yes. Well, got voice. Well, I must say that's the most beautiful 23rd Psalm I've ever heard. Yeah, that was very, very, very nice. Very nice. And I appreciate the gifts that some people have. Just beautiful music. So tonight we're going to be looking at a very interesting topic. You see, there is one thing and one thing only that all the experts agreed in 2021. And I can see you're on the edge of your seat. What was that? Because there wasn't much that it was agreed on. And that is that the best thing we can do to fight this flu is a strong immune system. And the word immune system is a word that is thrown around a lot, but I don't think a lot of people know what our immune system is. What is our immune system? It is the system that God put into our bodies which actually make it a self-healing organism. Because the fact is, we were designed to heal. And all of the principles you've been hearing about this week are principles that are designed to sustain health in the body, and if the body is not working well, when they are applied, they stimulate a response by the body to boost that healing process. And it makes the most sense to me that if a body is not well, let's just work with those healing powers that are in every human body. We don't doubt when we cut our hand that it will heal. It will always heal. Take a bit longer if we keep opening it, especially if we rub a bit of dirt into it. You know, there's a bit of common sense there. That same healing power that you see that healed that cut is all through the human body. So what is the immune system? It's actually front line of defence. And our front line of defence in the human body is our skin. Our skin is a coating, goes all over the human body, and it protects the human body. It's like a soft but very effective suit of armour. And the skin is an amazing organ. It breathes, but the skin also absorbs, so be careful what you touch. It also throws off waste, and it also helps to regulate the temperature in the body. But whenever the skin is scraped or it's cut, then we gotta take steps to protect that. Isn't that true? Because if we don't, things can get in. Isn't that right? It's like the lady that came to me when I was in New Zealand to see me, and she had a little 7-year-old boy, and when he walked in, he was walking in like this. And I looked straight at his finger, which was twice the size. And I said, what's happening with that finger? Because it's twice the size and it's red and it's got like a white top on it. So I'm immediately intrigued. She said, oh, he's got cellulitis. Well, that's not rocket science. What's cellulitis? Inflammation of the cell. Yes, we can see that. But I said, but why? Did something happen? She said, well, he had a blister and he was playing with his Matchbox cars in the dirt and the blister broke. Okay, what's happening next? The protection is gone, and so this little boy doesn't even think about all dirt's getting in there, and then an amazing process happens. The SWAT team's called in. The lymph goes there, that's the swelling. The white blood cells come, that's the white, that's the dead white blood cells there. It's an incredible process. So she rushes to the doctor and he says, infection. Interesting what an infection is. Infection. So he was put on antibiotics. Now it's 10 days later and he's on his second course of antibiotics. I don't know what the finger would look like if he wasn't on antibiotics, but didn't to me look like it was doing much. She said he's on pain-killing medication and sleeping tablets to help him sleep at night, and he's 7. I said, do you mind if I try something? She said, please. So what I did is I got two mugs. And in one mug, do you call it a mug? What you drink, a hot drink mug? Something like that. It's got one of these on the side. Yeah. It's bigger than a cup. And I put hot water in it. Why did I put hot water in it? You see, when hot water touches the skin, it has a stimulating effect. You know what it's like? Maybe you went home last night, it's a bit warmer today. Went home last night, you might have been a bit cool, and you have a hot shower, and you see tingling. You see, when you apply hot water, it has a stimulating effect. And that stimulating effect is stimulating blood. And we know because when we look at our body or whatever we put into the hot water, it goes red. What's the red? It's blood. And when you stimulate blood to the area, what are you stimulating? You're stimulating oxygen. You're stimulating water. Because this is what the blood carries. You're stimulating nutrients. And something else that you're stimulating in blood movement, not only is it bringing more oxygen, more water, more nutrients, but it's actually taking away waste. So when you think about it, if there's a problem in the body, all we need is more blood. And what happens is, as I could see with this finger, the blood was tending to sit or pool in that area. We needed the old blood out, and we needed fresh supplies of blood in. But after 3 minutes, everything slows down. So we've got now a slowing down. And we don't want the blood to slow down. So we've got another mug. And this mug has cold. And what we're talking about here is water. So let's look at what the cold does. And I think you'll agree with me. If you've tried turning the hot water off to finish your shower with cold, it stimulates all right. Stimulates big time. Because we're warm-blooded creatures, so when cold water touches, there's a reaction. Because if we were to stay in that cold water for a few hours, maybe all day, we'd probably die of hypothermia. And the body knows that. We're warm-blooded creatures, so when cold water touches, there's a reaction. And what are we stimulating? We're stimulating blood. But the difference is, between the hot and the cold, that it takes 30 seconds for the cold to get to a slowing down. Takes 3 minutes with the hot. So what we do is what I did was I put the finger in the hot water for how long? 3 minutes. And then just as it's starting to slow down, I put the finger in the cold. How long do I put it in the cold for? 30 seconds. And then after 30 seconds, it's starting to slow down, so what am I going to do? Put it back into the hot. But while it's in the cold, I'll put a little boiling water in there to maintain that heat. I put my good finger or my finger in, I put his good finger, test it, you're okay, yep, handle that. And what I find is, even if they can't handle it very hot at first, after the cold, they can handle it a little bit hotter. We do this 3 times because we are moving blood in a dramatic way and we can exhaust the body. So we just do it 3 times. Now, how long does that take? Let's be generous, 15 minutes. Now, when this little boy put his finger in the hot for the second time, I saw his body relax. And went back in the cold. And then the third hot, he looked at me with a smile on his face. Body language told me, I think his pain levels reduced 50%. How long does Tylenol take to kick in? Half an hour. 15 minutes. This is a powerful treatment. But not only is it stimulating blood to carry nutrients, oxygen, water, and its nutrients, that's your red blood cells, but what also the blood is carrying is the white blood cells. And the white blood cells, as we will see, is our internal army. Everything we need, we've got. It's just knowing how to access it. And what I did then was I grated a little potato, maybe about a teaspoon. I wrapped it in a cloth. So I made the cloth about this big, and I put the grated potato like that. Then I folded this side, bottom, top. So now I've got a little package about that big, and the part that's one layer is the part that touches his skin, and then at the back I've got a few layers. And then I put a sheet of plastic behind it, and what the plastic does is it insulates it and protects the clothing, and then I tape it on. And then I prayed. I said, Father in heaven, please bless this poultice. You see, God made the body to heal. God made the potato. God made the water. This is his natural way of healing. So for the rest of the 2 hours I was with the lady, this little boy just sat looking at me smiling. And when they got home, it was about 2 o'clock, he said, "Can we do that again?" Now, why did he say that? Because he'd experienced the results. So in case of sickness, number one, you look at the history. Notice what I did. What happened to the finger? Because something has happened. You can't change history, but it gives you an idea. I'm inquisitive. I want to know why. And then the symptoms are our body telling us what to do and where to go. And that finger was sore, and it was red, and it was inflamed. And then when you apply the alternating hot and colds, what you're looking for is the body's response. And what did his body's response? In fact, I could tell it without him saying a word. And children cannot always express themselves. That's why you watch. And you can tell. And that's why when he went home, I wouldn't be surprised if it was starting to build up again. So more hot and colds. They did it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They did it again at night. Another hot and cold. Fresh grated potato. Yes, you want a fresh one. What potato does is it reduces inflammation. And what potato does is it's a drawer. Put the potato poultice on overnight. Every time they changed the poultice, the finger's going down a little bit more. In the morning, when they took it off, everything had come away. Left with a little bit of a hole, but they now know they've got to cover it. But it was as clean as a whistle. No pus, no inflammation. So in, what would we say there? In about 18 hours, the hot and colds and the grated potato had done more than 10 days on the antibiotics. She said, "What'll I do now?" That's what she said to me back when and I said, "Well, I'll leave it up to you." But what has her son's response told her? Yes. And you've lost nothing. Is that right? If it doesn't work, you've actually lost nothing, but I've never seen it not work. In fact, these water treatments have been used for centuries. In the area of pain relief, they're without equal. And you can see why it works, because what you're moving is blood. The very process that God designed to heal us. That's why Leviticus 17:11 says, "The life of the flesh is in the blood." Because the blood is the carrier of oxygen, water, nutrients, carries away waste from those little cities inside your body called the inside working of the cell. Because that's what the blood's doing. It's carrying the oxygen, water, nutrients into the cell, carrying away the waste. Amazing process. My sister, she's a senior science teacher, and when she teaches immunology to her senior students, she says, "See, the body was designed to heal itself." Because they've just studied immunology, how the body works. Did you know that nurses used to learn this? I've got their textbook. It's called Abbott's Hydrotherapy for Nurses. It's the textbook that nurses used to learn. Why has it gone out of favour? Takes too much time. And in that little book, The Ministry of Healing, on page 127, in the chapter The Physician, the Educator, it says the use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many aren't prepared to give. Isn't that true? But look at the results on this little boy. That night was the first night he could sleep without painkillers and without sleeping tablets. And what are the sleeping tablets and the painkillers doing to this 7-year-old's kidneys and liver? I'm not criticising the mother, she didn't know. She went where we're all taught to go. I'm not against doctors, I think there are some great ones. I'm against the system. And it's only the last 100 years that allopathy has been used. Did you know before that there were all these simple natural remedies? that people knew, that the average person knew, and it was handed down from generation to generation. But I was going to say it's been lost. Well, I'm just here to show you it's not been lost. It's alive and well. So one more thing that alternating hot and colds do is it stimulates the bone marrow to make more red and white blood cells. It's a very powerful treatment. And so the frontline system of our immune system is actually our skin. But let's go to the head. And there are 7 holes in your head. 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth and 2 eyes. So what systems are in place there to protect the inside of the body? Well, let's go to the ear first. You've got that wonderful eardrum. That stops. And then you've got wax and hairs in your ear. So that there are systems there to protect the inside of the body. Let's go to the eye. It's amazing, the eye, because if something hits like that, you've got bones there that'll stop it, protect the eye. Well, let's say it's smaller and it goes in, blinking, the blinking process. And the little lashes, that's usually effectively stops most things. But if it happens to get through and into the eye, there's this mucus covering the eye. If it's a bug, it just traps it. And then you make your eye go round the world, is that right? And it goes to the corner and you flick it out. Amazing process, all the systems that are in place to protect the inside of the body. What about the nose? Well, it's amazing. We know we've got hairs in there. In fact, I remember when my father was getting older in his 80s and hairs were out of his nose, he used to tell his grandchildren it was dead fly legs hanging out his nose. Children would look. Anyway, it's my father's sense of humour. Yes, there are hairs in there, and I guess when you get older you see them more. But inside the nasal cavities, there's all these little caves, these little half caves. So if we breathe in pure air, it's very light, and it goes straight down into the trachea and then into the lungs. But if we breathe in air that's got any dust in it, it's heavier. And because it's heavier, it ricochets backwards and forwards in and out of these little half caves until that dust is shaken off, and then it's light and goes back down the trachea and into the lungs. And even if it happens to get through there, we've got little hairs there. And you know that if ever you're actually talking too much while you're eating and you maybe breathe in a little bit of mucus or a little bit of food, well, you cough and cough and cough and cough and cough, don't you? It's a reflex to get it up and out of the lungs. And that's why, as I have mentioned several times, nose purifies the air. That's how it purifies the air. It moistens the air. And it also warms the air and pressurizes the air, making it perfect for the lungs. That's why it's of the utmost importance, yes, to always breathe in and out through the nose, but also for anyone with congestion of the lungs, nose breathe, nose breathe, nose breathe. Let's come to the mouth. What systems are in place in the mouth? Well, you might be surprised to know what systems are in place in the mouth to protect the inside. We chew, yes we chew, there's saliva there, and that saliva has a lot of microorganisms in it, and there's the swallowing process and comes down into the stomach, and there's a strong line of defence there. It's called hydrochloric acid. In our gastrointestinal tract, hydrochloric acid is the front line of defence. Hydrochloric acid is a very strong antimicrobial agent. Antimicrobial agent. So it's antibacterial, antifungal. So if we eat anything that might have some bacteria or yeast on it, that hydrochloric acid can wipe it out. I told you the story, I think it was Tuesday night when we went on a journey through the gut, about that young man named Alexis St. Martin who'd sustained the gunshot wound to the stomach, and how Dr. Beaumont did experiments on that hole that was left after he'd healed. And sometimes he'd get syringes and he'd take out the gastric juices, put it into vials, and he'd put rotten meat in there. And within 20 minutes, that rotten meat had been dealt with. Did you know that dogs have 10 times the hydrochloric acid of humans? Have you seen what dogs eat? They just about kill us. That's because they have 10 times the hydrochloric acid that we do, and their gut is only 1 yard long. Ours is 10 yards long. That's why we have to be careful what goes in there. It's got a long journey before it comes out. So that's what hydrochloric acid is. The other day we looked at how it connects with pepsinogen to release pepsin, which breaks down protein. But it has another role, and that role is an important role in our defense system, our immune system. I was at a friend's house one day, and her daughter was playing with the dog and then got up and made the salad. Right. So I made sure I didn't drink with my meal that day. I wanted nice, strong hydrochloric acid, because the hydrochloric acid can wipe it out. And that's why it's so important not to drink with your meals. Ideally, you stop drinking half an hour before the meal and you resume about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. If you're thirsty after the meal, by all means take a mouthful. A mouthful's not going to dilute it too much. And I've never met anyone with too much hydrochloric acid, but I have met many that do not have enough. How can you tell? Well, it's 5 hours after the meal and the person feels like they've only just eaten the meal. That's why if someone says, I've got too much acid in my stomach, I'd say, well, you must be digesting very well, because that's what it does. I remember I was at my daughter's house one day. She lives on 7 acres in Wisconsin. And we went outside and, wow, the smell. And we're looking around, what's that smell? And her dog had pulled the leg of a dead cow into the yard. Ooh, did it smell. And it's eating it. That'd just about kill us. It's because they've got so much hydrochloric acid. And have you noticed they don't get reflux and they don't get heartburn and they don't have stomach ulcers? Because it's not the acid. The acid is actually very important. But if someone's eating all day long, having the largest meal at the end of the day and drinking with their meals and stressing out, all that can little by little reduce hydrochloric acid. And maybe the bacteria, maybe that fungus got through the stomach, survived because hydrochloric acid's so low. We've got another line of defence. And that other line of defence is lining the small intestine. We looked at this the other day. Up the middle of the villi is the lacteal. Got to get another colour here. And all through the villi is the blood. I hope you can see that nice red blood. That's the colour of our blood. But the other thing I wanted to point out was what's lining the gut. And that's that thick wall of Lactobacillus acidophilus bifidus bacterium. And when we went on our, yes, I am speaking English. When we went on our journey through the gastrointestinal tract, we discussed that. And I also talked about how it's quite an interesting study, and it's been going on for probably the last 20 years, is our microbiome and how important it is. And our microbiome is another line of defence. The other day when I showed you what this does, we looked at how it achieves a final breakdown, releasing certain nutrients like vitamin Bs, glutathione and methionine. We also looked at how this microbiome is responsible for the absorption of our nutrients out of the gut and into the blood, it also nourishes the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. But what I particularly wanted to point out in this class is it's a line of protection. So if the hydrochloric acid's low, and if some bacteria actually survive and get through, praise God, we've got another line of defence, which is our microbiome. So if it happened to get through there, it's okay, we've got another line of defence, which is our microbiome. But we also looked the other day at how there are certain drugs and things that people are taking that are killing off the microbiome. Antibiotics can kill it off. Long-term painkiller use can kill it off. The statin, another reason why the statin drugs are pretty dangerous, because they will knock off the microbiome. And maybe it's effective that it also broke down the cell wall, because what happens is you've lost nourishment and you've lost protection. Not a lot of people think about the microbiome when they're thinking of their immune system. But the fact is that this immune system in our body is established probably 70% by our microbiome. So you probably didn't think that tonight when we talk about our immune system, I was going to talk about our microbiome. You can have 10 different apples, and every single apple feeds a different gut bacteria. And we should be aiming for at least 7 different fibres each meal, because different fibres feed different microbiome. So the more fibre, the more microbiome, the better your immune system. So I want you to count your fibre at the meal. So I'm going to go through what my breakfast was this morning. So I had orange, I had apple, there's 2, I had chia seed, 3, I had almonds and Brazil nuts, there's 5, I had the simple needs bread, I had avocado, I had some red lentils. So what have I got there? 8. I had 8 different types of fibre at my breakfast this morning. We should have at least 7 to 8 different types of fibre every meal. And when someone's eating cereal and toast for breakfast, how much fibre's there? 1. Sandwiches for lunch, well, it depends what's on the sandwich, but no, you can't count cheese and meats because they don't feed any, because there's no fibre, they don't feed any microbiome. I was teaching in Andalusia at a homeschool camp, and I was teaching them about their microbiome, and I said to the kids, count your fibre. So the next day I said, okay kids, how much fibre? And one little boy said, 20. I looked at his father, I said, 20, and he went, he had a grape and he had a bit of apple and he was going to get a lot of different fibres. The more fibre, the more microbiome. It's called prebiotic. You've probably heard that. So a probiotic, pro means for, biotic means life. And you've probably heard that prebiotics feed the probiotics. Where do we get the prebiotics? Just fruit and vegetables, just plant. All your plant foods. They feed your microbiome. And when you've got a well-established microbiome, you've got a great wall of protection. But not only that. Remember that 70% of our immune system is based in our microbiome. Hippocrates, called the father of medicine, 400 years BC, he said, all disease begins in the gut And he didn't know what I'm telling you here. He didn't know about the intricacies of the workings of the gut. This is our colon. You probably thought I was drawing a flower. This is our colon. And this is the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. So this basically, your appendix is down on your left side, and that's where the small intestine comes in. There's your ascending colon going across transverse colon and then descending colon. In the transverse colon, they're like little lumps, I suppose you'd call them, and that's your Peyer's patches. How do you spell that? Peyer's. Your Peyer's patches. And your Peyer's patches are part of your lymphatic system. And our lymphatic system sweeps away waste from the tissues. And these little nodes are in your transverse colon, and they release lymphocytes. So lymphocytes are one of your white blood cells. We're going to have a look at the lymphocytes in a minute. But let's say the person's on cholesterol-lowering medication, they're on pain-killing medication, they've just had a couple of strong courses of antibiotics. Wow, their poor gut flora will be quite slaughtered. And so what happens then? The bacteria or the fungus that survived the hydrochloric acid now gets through and into the blood. Now we've got our next line of defense, which is our white blood cells. So our white blood cells, we have 5 different types of white blood cells. Neutrophils. Now neutrophils, they make up 65% of our white blood cells. And that little boy that had the big finger, all red with the white on top, the white was his dead neutrophils. Those neutrophils, whenever they come across bacteria or anything pathogenic, they encircle it and they kill it with hydrogen peroxide. Did you know that? And then basically they've just given their life for that. They die. And that's why all that white was the dead neutrophils. So they're doing a good job there, but remember what we needed to do? We needed to get fresh blood in, old blood out, and the body had to get rid of it quickly, so it made a hole. Well, there's already a hole from the blister, and that's when you can put the grated potato on and pull that waste out. That's the beauty of the natural remedies. They're just working with the body's processes. I raised 8 children without antibiotics, and they're all still alive. Because this is what I used to do. Because they'd get scrapes, they'd fall out of trees, they'd fall off horses, all the things kids usually do. But we just used the natural remedies. So neutrophils make up 65%. And then we've got lymphocytes. Now the lymphocytes, they're made in the lymph nodes, whereas all the other white blood cells are made in the bone marrow. Your lymphatic system is a system that sweeps away waste from the tissues, and then it takes the waste into the lymph nodes, under the arms, in the groin, in the neck, and in there we've got lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are also the scouts. They're also zooming around the body looking for anything, and there's an incredible communication network between these white blood cells. So they call on the neutrophils if they need the big guns to come along. And the lymphocytes make up 20%, and monocytes. The monocytes are the clean-up team. So they come along and clean away the waste from the neutrophils doing its job. So they make up 10%. of the white blood cells, and eosinophils. Eosinophils, they only take up about 3%, and basophils. Basophils take up about 2%. And the eosinophils and the basophils, they're the ones that you'll see in high amounts whenever there's an allergy. So you can see that the different white blood cells have different roles. 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, my math's right, isn't it? I'm not a great mathematician, but my husband said if my math's not right, I've lost half my audience. I think it's right. So they're our white blood cells, and I guess that's what most people see as their immune system. So when the Bible says in Leviticus 17:11 that the life of the flesh is in the blood, it's not just talking about the blood taking the oxygen and the nutrients and the water to the inside working of the cell and taking the waste away. It's also the carrier of the white blood cells. So the eosinophils and the basophils, they are very active whenever there's an allergy. So when I was working as the health director at Misty Mountain, I used to do a live blood analysis where you take a drop of blood and you put it on the slide, put it under the microscope, and it comes up on a little television screen. And there you see the white blood cells. And it was a dark field condenser, so it was like this board. It was a dark background, and you would see the white blood cells. Now, in someone that did not have an allergy, you would see maybe 2 or 3 basophils, 2 or 3 eosinophils. But if someone had an allergy, meaning, let's say it's usually gluten and dairy, sensitivity, you would see 5 or 6. Especially of the eosinophils. Now the eosinophils, they look like this, and they had a couple of nucleuses, and inside the nucleuses were these tiny little dots that would be jumping around, and they are histamines. So whenever you get a rise in eosinophils, you get a rise in histamines, and that causes the allergic responses. And if someone has an allergy and they go to the doctor, what does the doctor give them? Antihistamines. That's right. But what we've got to find out is, why are they there? Why are the allergy responses happening? And what I also found, if someone was gluten intolerant, I would see about 10 eosinophils. And if someone was celiac, I would see about 21 eosinophils. So it was a fairly good indicator. But I find that you can work that out without needing to have a live blood analysis, just by the body's symptoms. And I had a young couple in front of me at one program, and they were 35, and they'd come to the conclusion that they could not have a baby. They'd been married for 10 years and no baby had come. Lady had fallen pregnant once, but she had lost the baby early pregnancy. And I looked at her blood and I said, "Aha, you have quite an allergy to wheat." She said, "I know." She said, "If I eat wheat or dairy, I get rashes, I get diarrhea." I said, "Aha." But what she learnt at our retreat is how to eat very well without having to use dairy, without having to use wheat. She found alternatives. Now I looked at her husband's blood, and he also had about 21 eosinophils. I said, "Well, look at that." And he said, "Oh, this is ridiculous." He said, "I don't have rashes, I don't have diarrhea." And his wife looked at him and said, "Yeah, but you fall asleep in the restaurant." Do you know that's one of the most common signs is tiredness, falling asleep. What's a 35-year-old man falling asleep in a restaurant? Jeez. In fact, we had well, he's still there now. He's our chef. He's a Fijian chef. He's 30 now, but when he was 15, he came to work for us. And he's been backwards and forwards. We trained him, then he went away and came back, and he's back again. Great cook. And I could tell if he was eating wheat because he'd be yawning all day. One sign of a gluten intolerance is brain fog and just this heavy tiredness. Also bloating, that's another common sign. And when people say, what are the symptoms of someone having a gluten sensitivity, a gluten intolerance or celiac? I say, well, how long's a piece of string? Because it can be a whole lot of symptoms. And when we went through our journey through the gastrointestinal tract, sometimes it can be irritable bowel, can be Crohn's disease, can be colitis. Sometimes it can be eczema, psoriasis. I find that wheat and dairy are always a factor in all skin diseases. And we find that when they're eliminated, now it may take 2 months, but we find that the skin clears up, that the colon clears up. We find almost without exception that. So this couple both learned how to eat another way. And the lady also learned how to balance her hormones because, she had quite high anxiety. And often that can be a hormonal imbalance. 1 year later, I got a photograph of their new baby. So they'd gone home and they'd adjusted their diet, started taking the yam cream, and they were able to produce a little one, which they thought could not happen. We've actually seen that many times, which is really good news. But back to our immune system. So that basically is our internal army. Remember that it's the neutrophils that attack and consume any pathogen. The lymphocytes are the scouts. They're telling the neutrophils where they need to go. The monocytes, they're basically the cleanup team. And the eosinophils and the basophils, they are the ones you'll see quite in high amounts whenever there's an allergy. And yet, the princes, remember Psalm 146, verse 3, put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. The authorities in the field, they will tell you the only way to diagnose celiac is a biopsy. Now, I am not interested in having a biopsy of the colon. All you have to do is stop, and your body will tell you. And if after 2 months you're feeling great, your brain fog's gone, you've got more energy, what's your body just told you? This is good. And if you're really not sure, have a slice of bread, your body will quickly tell you. See, your body can tell you what no man can tell you. So back to my middle one, there it is. So your history gives an idea. If someone says to me, and I'm saying, did you have a happy, healthy childhood? And they say, well, yeah, it was pretty good, but I had a lot of earaches. Aha. Do you know what that tells me? They had an allergy. Because one of the signs of allergy is excess mucus. And mucus, basically, in your eustachian tubes are linking your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and your ears. And when there's an allergy, excess mucus comes. That's, and that's one of the contributing factors for blockage or earaches. And if someone says tonsils, aha, there's an allergy. And I say, what milk did you have a child? Oh, I had cow's milk. Aha. See, it's got a lot to do with our genetics. I've got a friend and he's got an organic dairy and an organic chook farm, or you call it chicken farm. His father does the cows and he does the chickens. And I was running a yoga, they got me to speak at a yoga group. And so we'd eat with them breakfast and lunch. And every meal, all their children had a big glass of milk straight from the cow. And the children drink it, and they enjoy it. But oh dear, I can't even have a mouthful. I'm a 5th generation Australian, Scottish descent. There's obviously no dairy in my heritage because I can't handle it. I had bronchitis a lot as a child, and I know now it's because I had an intolerance to dairy. But these children can handle it. I think it's because they're children of a 5th generation dairy farmer. So a lot's got to do with the genes. And I certainly do acknowledge that raw organic cow's milk is very different to the cow's milk that's in the supermarket. But still, it is not a food that I advise because milk really is for babies. But I leave it up to the person. But it is a common allergen. The figures show that in Australia, 60% of Australians are intolerant to dairy. Now, if it was raw, organic, it'd probably bring it down to 30%. Yes, I acknowledge that. And so it's being your own doctor and seeing what works for you. Your body can tell you what no man can tell you. So it doesn't hurt to go off those foods for a period of time and see what your body says. But don't go off it until your cupboards are well stocked. Because remember, the strongest urge in the human body is hunger. And if you go home and you're hungry, you usually grab for just whatever's easy. Your immune system is your defense, and it rises whenever something comes in that the body is reacting to. So your lymphatic system is like a network of capillaries that sweeps away waste from the tissues, and it has little gates that are one-way gates. And to activate your lymphatic system, movement of arm and legs, but specifically the rebounder, jumping up and down on that rebounder stimulates the lymphatic system to really move, and the waste goes into the nodes, in the neck, in the groin, under the arms. But there's one area where it's thrown straight out, and that's the tonsils. So if the tonsils, they're like the watchman at the gate. So they're a frontline defence system going down your throat. And if they're raised and swollen, it's just the watchman at the gate saying, "Excuse me, there's a problem." It's like in the old days, they had a walled city and they had watchmen backwards and forwards. Let's say the watchmen start blowing the trumpet because the enemy's coming, and one of the men's trying to sleep, so he shoots the watchman. Now I can sleep. The enemy, that's what you're doing when you take the tonsils away. What you have to ask is why. Are the tonsils inflamed? Take the child off, because there are many children with that have these swollen tonsils. Take them off dairy, take them off wheat. There's so many different things you can use now. There's organic soy milk, there's almond milk, there's coconut milk if you want to milk. Wheat, spelt, use the spelt, or use the simple needs breads. And the simple needs is a sourdough, which means it's pre-digested. It's a sourdough gluten-free bread, and it'll keep in your fridge for 6 weeks. Oats are, and we'll look at oats a little bit in our next lecture when we look at inflammation, and we're going to have a look at lectins, because oats are high in lectins, which can increase inflammation. Peanuts are commonly contaminated with mould, so they are best eliminated. And the last one is like pouring kerosene on a fire, which is the refined sugar. And I thank Jodie for her little testimony before my lecture tonight. The more sugar you eat, guess what? The more you want. It's like any drug. And what we have found when these foods are stopped for the child with the swollen tonsils, the tonsils clear up. That's the good news. Choose your hard. Some might say, well, it's hard not giving this to children. Well, there's lots of alternatives. You can use cashew butter or almond butter. You can use honey, maple syrup, lots of alternatives today. I tell you what is hard, for that poor child to go and have an operation where the tonsils are cut out. That's hard. So you choose your hard. So our immune system is an amazing immune system. And what we want to do is we don't want to eat food that's going to overstimulate it. You can have not enough immune system and you can have an overload of immune system. One lady said, I got a cold, my immune system's down. I said, no, you got a cold because your immune system's really good. Because a cold is just a house clean. And after that, now what really boosts the immune system is fevers. Fevers are a wonderful thing. They're an amazing immune system booster. So if you do get a fever, rejoice. But what puts the fire out? Water. Water in and water out. Don't have a hot shower, don't have a cold shower, just have a tepid shower or a tepid bath. And that will help the body take that heat out. But what if the fever comes back in an hour? Have another bath. What if it comes back in another hour? Have another bath. But when the fire has burnt up all the rubbish, the fire will go out. Same with the body. All my children had fevers at different times. I never gave them ibuprofen or Tylenol. Never. Because the fever has a purpose. And if they're kept well hydrated, they will not convulse. So it's very simple. In my book, Sustain Me, I have a whole chapter on hydrotherapy, water therapy, simple water treatments that you can do. But the simplest one with the fever is just have a cool shower or a bath. If there's a fire outside, what do? Grab the hose. Water puts the fire out, in and out. But remember what it also does a wonderful boost for your immune system. So one of the best ways you can protect yourself against winter colds and flus is the Sustain Me principles, and finish every hot shower with a quick cold. Aren't you glad I didn't say have a quick hot and a long cold? Have a long hot and a quick cold. So we're going to have a break now, and when we come back, we're going to have a look at inflammation in the body. We're going to have a look at why, and we're going to have a look at how you can conquer it.
Testing 1 2. 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 Headset 2. There we go. Okay, good evening, everyone. I can do it now, but even at the end, yeah. Good evening, friends. It's time to get started again. So I would invite you to turn your cell phones off or put them on mute, and so we're not interrupted, and then find a seat, please. We're going to go ahead and get started. I would like to invite you to bow your head as I offer another prayer. Our loving Father in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of this Sabbath day and for the blessings that you have given us. And we ask, Father, for your presence and that you would be with Barbara O'Neill as she shares with us. Give us attentive ears and help us to learn something that will be a blessing to our families, and also we can in turn share it with someone we know. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Okay, Barbara, please come forward.
Thank you and welcome back. Welcome back, where we're going to be looking at inflammation. And I often get questions, what can you do for inflammation? So, students, what do you think would be my next question? Aha. You're learning well. Why? Why is there inflammation there? And a lot of people don't know where to start. But there are two conditions that are well known to be inflammatory conditions, and one is arthritis and another one is gout. They're very similar. But today we've got sclerotic arthritis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and just plain arthritis. It doesn't matter what the name is. Have you got that? And if you've ever been given a name, you don't have to take that name on. Because that name is just a name of a group of symptoms. And there is no one like you. And that's why you are the most qualified to be your own doctor. And again, what do we first look at? History. We look at our history. You can't change your history. Of course you can't change it. But it can give a little bit of an indication as to why this is happening in this toe at the moment, or why certain things are happening in this hip at the moment, or as to why certain things are happening in any area of the body. But I love the formula that I found in the Ministry of Healing, in the chapter, The Physician, the Educator. And this is the formula, and I've been using it for about 40 years now, and I still use it because it is so effective. What the writer says, in case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. So how do we find the cause? When did it start? What happened before that? Has anything ever happened to that leg or that knee or that elbow, etc., etc., etc.? There is always a reason. And that's why it's good to know your history, and it's why it's a very good thing to document your case. Part of being your own doctor is documenting your case. In the case of sickness, ascertain the cause. Unhealthful conditions changed. Is it the mouldy house? Has it begun since you moved into the house that's underneath the big electrical wires? Did the problem start after the smartphone got put on your house? Or after the 5G tower got built down the road, etc., etc., etc. Unhealthful conditions changed. In fact, what's your life, your health worth? I'd go to any means to get my health, because health is wealth. Isn't that true? I was in a petrol station one day, you call it the gas station, and there was this huge, big, fancy car. I don't know much about cars. I only know it was red. My husband says, What car were they driving? I said it was white. That's about all I see, but I'm in real trouble when I go into the car park and there are 6 white cars. I don't know which one to go into. It was a really big fancy car, and he got out of the car with a big struggle. He was very overweight, his face was bright red, and he had trouble walking, and I thought, that man's obviously got a lot of money, but he hasn't got health. And you know, if he smashes that car, he can buy another car, can't he? But this body, it's actually the one we've got. And I used to say, you can't get a new body, but actually you can. And I've seen many people get new bodies by changing the conditions. Is the basement mouldy? Do you have to get the basement redone? Have you got to chop down a few trees so you can get more sunlight into your house? So unhealthful conditions changed, wrong habits corrected. How do we know what's a bad habit? Well, there's a wonderful little formula called Sustain Me. And if you go through that formula, tick the boxes and cross the boxes and just see, are you getting to bed early enough? Are you drinking enough water? Etc., etc. So in case of sickness, ascertain the cause, unhealthful conditions change, wrong habits corrected, then nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities and re-establish right conditions back in the system, because that's what your body wants to do. So the little boy with the finger, isn't that what we did? Didn't we just assist nature? Assist nature by applying the alternating hot and colds and a grated potato poultice? How simple is that? And isn't that what everyone's got in their home? Hasn't everyone in their home got some ice in their freezer? They've all got a kettle. They can easily do those hot and colds. And I think every home's got a potato. Such simple natural remedies. I find it an excellent formula. And in the little book Ministry of Healing, in the chapter The Physician, the Educator, and by the way, that's what physician means, educator. And there's 2 paragraphs that I just love. It says in the second page of this chapter, it says, the only hope of better things on the planet is the education of people in the right principles. That's why I'm here and that's why you're here. Am I right? Is the education of people in the right principles. Let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs but in nature. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that arise because of a violation of the basic laws of health. And those basic laws of health are outlined in the Sustain Me principles. Every person, how many? Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. And that's what you're gaining in this week's classes. And I know I'm guilty of information overload. And so you have the books. And if unfortunately you run out of books, Ricky bought 900 with him. He thought that'd be enough. But you guys are thirsty. And you want to share this information with your friends, which is wonderful. And so the official barbara'o'neill.com, you can go there and get more. What a wonderful Christmas birthday present, eh? To have that little book in the home, so when there's a problem, you can go there and get those simple remedies. Knowing if you go to emergency, you're going to sit there for 8 hours. Am I right? And what could you be doing at home? These simple natural remedies. Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. It is important to understand the principles involved in the treatment of the sick and have a practical training to enable one rightly to do it. You know how I got my practical training? Working on the kids. And guess what? They're all still alive. Because if it doesn't work, you have lost nothing. That's how you get your practical experience. And a friend says, oh, I've got such a sore throat. Have you? Well, I know just what to do. Have a hot lemon and honey drink with a little bit of cayenne pepper in it, slice up an onion and wrap it round your throat. And they'll go, what? Is it going to hurt? No, it's not going to hurt at all. Do you know, a lot of mothers say to me, what can I do for my child? They've got strep throat. What's this strep throat? We used to call it sore throat. Do you remember that? Sore throat. And you know what one mother said? But the doctor says if I don't give the child antibiotics, it could go to their brain. Have you ever heard of a sore throat going to the brain? I have to tell you, I haven't. See, we've got common sense, isn't that right? And people have had sore throat for centuries. What do? You eat lightly for a couple of days, have that hot lemon and honey drinks. If you're in Australia, you could buy eucalyptus cough drops. I don't know if you can get them here. See, there's a recipe for flu bomb in Sustain Me. And if you're unable to get Sustain Me, you can just Google Barbara O'Neill poultices and it's on there. And it's got lemon and honey, but also cayenne pepper and a bit of eucalyptus oil. One lady said, I got the eucalyptus oil and I can't use it. I said, why not? Well, it says not fit for human consumption on the bottle. I said, well, we're not asking you to drink the whole bottle. We're asking you to take one drop. And by the way, the eucalyptus cough drops in Australia, what do you think they've got in them? Eucalyptus oil. Yeah. So trust your instinct, trust your common sense, and remember the great God of heaven. And I love Psalm 32 verse 8, one of the first ones I claimed, where God says, I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way that thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eye. Pray for guidance, because he's there and he'll impress your mind. Go this way, go that way. And he will bless those natural remedies. See, there's many methods of healing today, but there's only one that God approves of. And you know what one that is? The one that works with the body. That works with the healing powers that he put into this body. So what do we do for inflammation? There's quite a few things that you can do for inflammation, and that's what I want to look at now. Inflammation indicates an acid environment in the body. So let's have a look at what can increase acidity and what can decrease. Sunshine alkalizes. But when you lay out in the sun for an hour and get burnt, guess what? You've actually created an acid environment in the body. And if you don't have any sun, that can increase inflammation, but just the right amount of sun. The sun is the healer. Do you know that sunshine penetrates deep in the body and it can kill off harmful pathogens? Use of water. In a dehydrated state, that creates a very acid environment. One of the best anti-inflammatories there is water. Just drink water. Just drink 8 glasses a day. 8 glasses of 8 ounces at least. And before each glass, take a crystal of Celtic salt, just about the size of a sesame seed. Now don't put it in the water, put it in your mouth, because we should be drinking pure water. And what will happen is the mucous membranes in the mouth will absorb the minerals, and when you drink the water, those minerals pull the water inside the cells, the quickest way to hydrate the body. And especially if the person's got a fever, remember fever's a wonderful thing, fever is your friend. Because they're perspiring, they need that little bit more of salt. Start early and do it little by little by little over the day. Sleep. Many people are sick today because of lack of sleep. And especially try and get at least 2 hours before midnight, 3 if possible. Because it's before midnight that the healing in the body accelerates. So in a 24-hour day, when healing is the most potent, and remember, you've got to lay yourself on nature's operating table. What's that called? Bed. You're laying yourself on nature's operating table and allowing the processes in the body that will reduce inflammation to be active while you sleep. 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep. So once again, 8. Trust in God. When we're stressed and when we're anxious, that can increase inflammation and can increase acidity in the body. Trusting God means exactly what it says, trusting Him. I don't like what's happened, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to trust that God has a way through this. And Romans 8:28, that's easy to remember. Romans 8:28, the Bible says that God can turn all things together for good, for those that love Him, for those who are called according to His purpose. And 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, in everything give thanks. Doesn't mean you have to like it. But when you say, thank you, Father. So when I broke my arm, I said, thank you, Father in heaven, it wasn't my right arm. Thank you, Father in heaven, it wasn't the day before I fly to America. Do you know, as you start looking, you can start to see things to be thankful for. And that eases the stress and allows us to trust Him. Abstain. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a list of all of the foods and things that often go into people's body that have an acid effect. So the acid list, if there's inflammation in the body, these must stop. Refined sugar, it's not a surprise, that's a pure acid. Also meat. When meat breaks down in the body, only 58% is used as fuel. That's a 42% waste, which is a sulfur waste. And sulfur is one of the acid minerals. So the acid minerals are sulfur. Another acid mineral is phosphorus. And another acid mineral is chlorine. So looking at the acid foods, also the hybridized wheat. So I'm not referring to the Enkenhorn, I'm not referring to the spelt, I'm referring to the wheat that was hybridized in the 1950s. 2 nights ago we had a look at how the hybridization of the wheat changed the starch structure. It gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, so it's a factor in diabetes. Now we're looking at another aspect, and that is what it did to the protein or the gluten structure. It created an incredibly complex structure, and it's almost only the cast iron gut that can break it down. Do I eat wheat? Sometimes, but not much. Because I'm travelling, I can't always be assured that you can get spelt. Not often do you see spelt on the plane. But because I don't have any health problems, it doesn't cause me a problem. But if I had any health problem at all, I wouldn't touch it. What also has an acid effect is caffeine. Did I hear a groan? You're going to be so happy when you're off it. Freedom! Caffeine has an acid effect on the body, and also alcohol. Alcohol has an acid effect. Do you know your history? 1920 to 1933, do you know what happened in those 13 years? Prohibition. Alcohol was banned. Do you know the figures in that time is mental institution occupancy dropped to 8%. Jails were almost empty. Domestic violence almost wiped out. Why did they legalise it? Some say it's because of the moonshine. No, the American government said to the American people, if we legalise alcohol, you don't have to pay tax. Do you pay tax? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The Australian Health Department have stated that there's no safe dose of alcohol. Tobacco, it's not a food, but it certainly has an acid effect on the body. All drugs have an acid effect because all drugs basically are chemicals. Yes, in a crisis, a drug can save a life. I'm so glad for the pain-killing medication, so I didn't feel the orthopaedic surgeon pull my broken bone back into place, but that was one day. The body can cope with it very lightly here or there in a crisis or in a situation. But ideally, we should not have it. And as the illustration I showed you in the last lecture with that little boy, there was no need for antibiotics or pain-killing medication or sleeping tablets through simple water treatments and a poultice. How easy is that? All grains, other than the list I'm about to put on the alkaline side, and all nuts, other than Brazil and almond, which I'm about to list, and also legumes, but not all legumes. So let's look at the alkaline side. So the alkaline side are high in the alkaline minerals, which is magnesium and calcium and sodium and potassium and iron. And in my book, Self-Heal by Design, there's a whole chapter on the acid alkaline where I've got this in detail. And in my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter on arthritis, which also defines this. Because conquering inflammation in the body is possible when we go for a mostly alkaline diet. So the most alkaline food is the lemon, and you might say, no, lemon is acid. It's acid where it should be. Okay, students, what's the only part of the body that should be acid? Stomach. Yes, you're listening well. The lemon. So lemon is acid where it should be, which is when it gets into our stomach, because our stomach should be acid. But when it is broken down in the gut and the minerals are dispersed, it has an alkaline effect in the tissues. Dark green leafy vegetables, dark green, I'm just going to say dark green here. Dark green leafy vegetables have an alkaline effect on the body, and the reason they do is because they're so high in the alkaline minerals. Some people choose to have green smoothies. Some people choose to have a green barley supplement a couple of times a day. It's one of the best blood and tissue cleansers. And that is a drink that we give our guests when they're on the juicing days. We give them a couple of doses of green barley. It's not their favourite drink, but it is very alkalizing for the tissues. Dark green leafy vegetables are very alkalizing because they contain this. Vegetables. All your vegetables have an alkaline effect, but there is one group of vegetables that has a question mark. And this group of vegetables is the nightshade group of vegetables. That's the tomato and also the bell pepper and eggplant. You can sometimes call it aubergine. And the fourth one is the potato. And I'm not talking about the sweet potato because the sweet potato is a yam. It's actually not even a potato. They're the nightshade group of vegetables. Now, the reason they have a question mark is for some people they have an acid effect, and for some people they have an alkaline effect. And one of the reasons they can tend to have an acid effect is because they are high in lectins. Have you heard about lectins? What are lectins? Now, Dr. Stephen Gundry, in his book, The Plant Paradox, he says we all should be carnivores because there's too many lectins in the plant kingdom. And so I read the book out of curiosity. I wanted to know why he says that. And the book annoyed me quite a lot at first. Because he says our tongue took 10 million years to develop. And the gun took 20 million years to develop, and I thought, oh, what? But the fact is, I was given the book just before I left Australia in 2021, and the US, and when I arrived in Australia, they put me into quarantine. I was in a room for 2 weeks and I had this book. God had another plan. So you're sitting in a room, and then I'd look at the book and I'd give it another go. Give it another go. And I'm so glad I read that book. I say, thank you, Father in heaven. Because I thought, I know God put lectin in the foods. And what does happen, if lectins get into the blood, it increases inflammation. So as I'm reading through the book, a few things stood out at me. Number one, if we have good gut flora, that disarms any lectins. But let's go back a little bit further. Lectins are in unripe fruit. That's why the birds don't eat them. But as soon as the grapes and the tomatoes and the figs ripen, what's happening now? The birds know something we don't, do they? That bitterness in the unripe fruit is the lectins. And that's why it is best to eat tree-ripened fruits and vegetables, because there's no lectins. Now, lectins are a little bit higher, especially in the tomato and the bell pepper, but, and also the eggplant, traditionally, the Europeans, who are probably the country that eat a lot of these foods, they de-seed and de-skin tomatoes, bell peppers, and often eggplants, and that takes away the lectins. Now also, legumes. The good doctor, the prince, says you shouldn't be eating legumes, they're high in lectins, but if they're soaked and very well rinsed, most people don't rinse them enough. I rinse them after I soak them, and then I rinse them halfway through cooking. That's dirty water. Get rid of it. And then when they're half cooked or maybe 3/4 cooked and I rinse them again, then I put them into their sauce. And it might be a cashew sauce like we had at lunchtime today, with garlic and onion and ginger and broccoli and cannellini bean, very nice. Or it might be a rich tomato sauce, or it might be like a dal, an Indian curry. But first of all, you have to prepare the legumes. And when you do that, you wash away the lectins. Pressure cooking particularly destroys the lectins. What about grains? If the grains are ground into a flour, are made into a sourdough bread, disarms the lectins. Sally Fallon, in her book Nourishing Traditions, she looks at all the traditional way of preparing food. And all the traditional way of preparing food disarms the lectins. So 2-minute oats, full of lectins. Do you know how the Scottish used to eat their oats? They'd soak them all day, put them on the wood stove all night for breakfast, no lectins. So what we need to do is go back to the traditional way of preparing food. And then there's no lectins. And if we ensure that we've got nice, strong gut flora by eating lots of fibre, remember at least 7 to 8 different types of fibre every meal, because that'll feed our microbiome, and including cultured foods in the diet. That helps to replace and restore the gut flora. If you have been on long-term painkiller, if you have been on statin drugs, if you have been on antibiotics, then probably for a couple of months you will need to take early in the morning a probiotic powder, and that will help to also replace the gut flora. And the fibre, remember the fibre feeds the microbiome. They're your prebiotics. So that's why it has a question mark. If you don't have any inflammation in your body and you love these foods, eat them. Now, my husband wouldn't be very happy if the potatoes stopped. So we do have potatoes most meals, but we don't have a whole plate full of potatoes. So when you go back and have a look at the acid-alkaline balance in the body, you can balance it. as long as most of your food is from the alkaline side. Millet is a lectin-free grain. And sorghum. Sorghum. In Australia, sorghum was only ever grown for cows. And then they discovered it was gluten-free. And it's like a girlfriend of mine, she's just retired, she's a doctor. She's early 80s. She said 40 years ago you never heard of gluten intolerance. 20 years ago it was just starting to be seen. Today it's almost out of control. It's hand in hand with the hybridisation of the wheat. You see, by the 1990s, hybridised wheat was everywhere. But it's not only the hybridisation of the wheat, it's most people just overdo the wheat. They overdo it. And when you consider this acid, cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea, it's almost 100% acid, that diet. And remember, it's only one grain, one fibre. Our gut needs a whole variety of fibres. So when they discovered that the sorghum is gluten-free, now you can buy it as a flour, and it's actually not bad to make things with. They're the two lectin-free grains. Quinoa is not lectin-free, it is gluten-free, but it is not lectin-free. But if you rinse and rinse, usually you should rinse the quinoa 6 times before you cook it. If you just pour quinoa into the pan and put water in and cook it, it has a bitter aftertaste. That's the lectin. But if you rinse and rinse and rinse and then cook it, there's no bitterness. So you've got rid of most of the lectins. Buckwheat. Buckwheat is another alkaline grain. And buckwheat pancakes are a nice way to get used to buckwheat. The Polish love their buckwheat. Also, looking at alkaline, spelt. Now, spelt is a wild hybrid of the original wheat, called the ancient grain, because it has not been hybridised. But it's a very close relative of the original wheat. And you can get spelt sourdough breads today, you can get spelt pasta, you can get a lot of spelt things. So if someone's gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive, they can handle spelt. But if someone is celiac, they can't even handle the spelt. Then they just can go to the simple needs breads. So that's the good thing about today, there are so many options. 20 years ago, there were not as many options. 40 years ago, hardly any options, but 40 years we didn't have the problem. It's not just the hybridisation of the wheat, it's the fact that most wheat today is also grown with Roundup, which is glyphosate. But even organic wheat is still the hybridised wheat. And of course it's a little bit better because it doesn't have the herbicides and insecticides on it. But if someone's celiac, they have to keep away from that. So when I say grains here, I'm talking about all other grains other than that list here. That means oats are there. That also means rice is there. But as you will see, to maintain a correct pH balance, we should be having about 20% acid-forming foods, and that 20% should come from here. And we should be having about 80% of alkaline grains. So a few more is almonds and Brazil. They're the two alkaline nuts. They're the two that I like to have every morning. Brazil nuts are very high in selenium, and our thyroid needs selenium to convert iodine into thyroxine. And mercury fillings have an affinity for selenium. So if a person has mercury fillings in their mouth, they're often low in selenium, which can be a contributing factor to thyroid problems. Now, if you didn't catch all that, it's in my book, Sustain Me. I've got a chapter on the thyroid. And also the alkaline legumes are lima beans. Lima beans are an alkaline legume and lentil. So whether it be red or brown or green, lentils are alkaline. And soy. Soy is only a problem if it's been genetically modified. And I'd say you can't be an organic farmer if you use genetically modified food. So if you go for the organics, it's not genetically modified. Let's hope Robert Kennedy Jr. can get labelled on our foods whether it's genetically modified or not. Yeah? Unfortunately, Monsanto is so big, they win every court case. But if you go organic, it's not genetically modified. When we eat genetically modified food, it has the ability to interfere with our genes. And you probably know there's something else that's interfering with our DNA. It's a recent shot that people were told they had to have. And I am not happy about the fact that many people were blackmailed into having that. Yep. Dr. Peter McCulloch has got quite a good protocol to help detoxify from that. And hopefully, no more. So to maintain a more alkaline environment in the body, it's best to concentrate on the more alkaline side. What about fruit? Fruit is high in fibre, it is high in sugars, and it's low in minerals. Whereas vegetables, it's high in fibre, high in minerals, low in sugars. So fruit has a question mark. If someone has a yeast problem in the body and they're eating a lot of fruit, it can feed that yeast. And that, in turn, can create an acid condition. But if someone does not have a yeast presence or problem in the body, the fruit is certainly a nice cleanser. In my book, Sustain Me, in the chapter on arthritis, I give the acid-alkaline balance in detail. And in my book, Self-Heal by Design, I have antifungal programs, and with that, it's reducing the fruits right down. One lady said, "But Barbara, God made fruit good." I said, "He sure did. But if you've got a certain condition in the body, for a period of time, you may need to get that fruit amount down in your body. But there's no limit on the vegetables. So to maintain a correct pH in the balance in the body, we should be having about 80% of the alkaline forming foods and about 20% of the acid forming foods. And a lot of people I meet today who've got arthritis, if you look at their diet, it's about 80% acid forming foods and about 20% alkaline forming foods. So you can have a dramatic effect on the inflammation in your body just by changing the food that you're eating. Now, one of the most alkaline drinks you can drink is water. But hopefully it hasn't got fluoride or chlorine in it. And the reverse osmosis filter is probably one of the best at getting the fluoride out. And hopefully soon Robert Kennedy Jr. will be able to get it all out of your water. But until then, it's a good idea to make sure that the water you're drinking is a more alkaline water. You can put a squeeze of lemon in it and that'll help to alkalise it. But there is another juice that is extremely alkalising. Obviously the green drinks are, but this is a vegetable and fruit juice. It's 80% carrot, which is very alkalising, 10% celery, another great alkaliser, and 10% apple. And the apple we usually use is the Granny Smith apple. So implementing that juice once or twice or 3 times a day can help to bring the body back into an alkaline state. With arthritis, I know when my mother had arthritis, she had arthritis 6 years before she eventually passed at the age of 51, and this was one of the juices that she used to have every day. She'd gone through the mill, she'd gone through the medical system, and she just got worse and worse, and her hands got more and more deformed, and we could see that she was just going downhill. And so I met a lady, I was only 25 at the time, who dealt with herbs. Her name was Daisy, she was 80. And she took Mum, and over 6 weeks, little by little, with change in diet, she got her off all her medication, got her pain-free, and that juice was one of the juices that she used. It's extremely alkalizing. What she also used was the Sustain Me principles. No. Stay. So as you can see, there are some things that must stop to reduce the inflammation in the body. And it's not that these things must stop, it's that they need to be reduced. But this top list must be stopped. Inhale, because oxygen alkalizes the tissues. The more oxygen is going in the body, the more alkalizing the tissues would be. And inhaling and exhaling through our nose using the abdominal muscles. Do you know, it's a good idea to go and look at a child sleeping at night and look how they breathe. Their breathing is not strained, it's relaxed. And using the abdominal muscles. So it's important to make sure you don't have very tight clothes around your waist. It's also important to make sure your back's straight, and that can be straight by strengthening your abdominal muscles. When we bend, I just want to show you how the 2-year-old picks up a ball. This is how a 2-year-old picks up a ball. Is that right? How does the adult pick up the ball? Do you know what that does? That weakens the back. And many people have a weak back because of the way they stand, because of the way they bend. We should be standing straight. Then we can use our abdominal muscles to breathe, and our abdominal muscles should be strong. One lady said to me, "My abdominal muscles are long gone." I said, "You'd be standing like this." Because it's our abdominal muscles that cause us to stand upright. So push-ups every day. If you can't get down on the floor, you can do push-ups on the bench or push-ups on the wall, but start those push-ups and little by little build up the core muscles. Pilates exercises, they target those core muscles. It's one of the best things you can do for your back. Biggest bone in the body is our femur. Biggest muscle mass in the body are our quads, and that's where we should bend, and that's where we should lift. Like the 2-year-old, that's how they do it. They go like this, they're using this. Now, a lot of people can't do what I just did because they don't have strength in their quads. You can get strength in your quads by going nearly down, nearly up, nearly down, nearly up, nearly down, nearly up. And when it starts screaming, give them a rest and then keep trying that. Even ladies, while you're doing the dishes, you can get those quads strong. And muscle knows no age. Whether you're 9 or 90, you can have strong muscles. So to inhale through the nose, yes, the mouth must be shut. And to breathe with your abdominal muscles, the back must be straight. And to get the back straight, strengthen the abdominal muscles. Nutrition, we've just looked at nutrition. We should be having, remember the 3 essential food groups: fibre, all plants contain fibre. We should be having great proteins, and your proteins come from your legumes, your nuts, seeds. Where do seeds sit? They do sit here, I just can't fit them. Maybe I can fit them here. Yes, yes. Seeds. So that's pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds. All your seeds sit on the alkaline side. Remember what God said in Genesis 1:29? He said, "Behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, and the which of the tree is a fruit-bearing seed," that's the nut. He said, "To you it shall be for meat." Yes, the macadamia nuts here. Yes, the cashews there. Yes, the pecan. We call it pecan. You call it pecan. Yes. And yes, the walnuts are there. And it's not that they're bad. We need 20% from the acid side. So when most of your food's from there, then of course you can have some from this side. Moderation in all the good things. I've never had to limit anyone on greens, but certainly the more concentrated. Yes, please, moderation in the nuts. It'd be a very sad thing to develop an allergy to nuts, and it usually only develops if you overdo them. And exercise. If you over-exercise, you can create an acid environment, but most people don't exercise enough. And exercise is one of the most powerful ways to move the blood through the body. Remember, the blood is the life of the flesh. The more you move the blood, the more the oxygen and the nutrients and the water are able to get to every cell in the body and take away the waste. You see, we live in a self-cleaning organism. And before you renovate an old house, you always clean it. Isn't that right? And so before renovation can happen in the body, we've got to make sure the house is clean. And when you keep these sustain me principles, you'll find you'll start to go to the bathroom regularly. You'll find you'll start to sleep better. In fact, the more you implement that, the easier it will get to keep that. People ask me all the time, they say, "Barbara, how can you keep up the pace?" I say, "I've found a formula." And there it is. I get 8 hours every night. I totally trust in my Father in heaven. I drink adequate water. Yes, I grab sunshine as much as I can. I choose not to take that into my body. I aim for a high fibre, generous protein, great fats diet. I do all the good things in moderation, and I exercise daily. One lady said, "Oh, Barbara, you're so disciplined." I say, "Well, it works." It works. And we've got a saying in Australia, if you're on a good thing, stick to it. Do you have that saying? And it basically what the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things. Prove it. Try it for yourself. It says, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. Try it, prove it for yourself, and it works. Do it. It's as simple as that. But there's something else. There's another Bible principle I wanted to introduce you to, and that is time. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, the Bible says, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which was planted. Are you plucking up the sugar, the caffeine? A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to laugh and a time to cry. A time to mourn and a time to dance. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. And there's a time to heal. And that healing is not always quick, have you noticed? In fact, I felt it was the longest 6 weeks of my life having this in plaster. And in the book, Ministry of Healing, on that page that I love, page 127, she says, nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual, and to the impatient it seems slow. I'm impatient. But it says that if we implement these basic principles and leave the body, it will heal. But you've got to give it time. And in Galatians 6 verse 9, the Bible says, let us not be weary in well-doing, because we will heal if we faint not. In other words, keep doing it, keep doing it. That castor oil compress won't break up that bone spur overnight. It might take a few months, but I love God's operating table. I love God's operations. When I worked in the operating theatre, I was the instrument nurse. I had memorised where all the instruments were, and I would be in the operating theatre, and they're doing the operations, and they'd say, McGill's forceps. And everyone would look at me, I would run, I'd get the package because it's all sterile, I'd open the brown paper, used to be in 1976, I'd especially open the green thick cotton that was covering it, so there it's all sterile. I'd have long like sticks, tweezers. I could touch the end, but the tip was sterile. I'd pick it up in doctor's gloved, sterile hand. I was the instrument nurse. I knew all the instruments. Well, I still see myself as the instrument nurse. And the instruments that I use now are water, whether it be hot, whether it be cold, whether it be ice. Is grated potato poultices. Well, there's another poultice called a ginger poultice. And this ginger poultice is an excellent poultice for joint inflammation. So how do you do the ginger? Let's say I'm going to do it on a wrist. I might do it that big, and I'll grate up the ginger and I'll put it in the middle like this. And then I'll fold over each side. I'll fold up the bottom, I'll fold down the top, and now I have a poultice that's about this big. And I've got a few layers at the back because I've folded it over to make a package, and that's a great idea because if it's a little bit wet, those folds will take it up. And then I cover it with a sheet of plastic. Often I just fold cling wrap over a few times to make it more usable, and then I'll put it on the wrist and I'll bandage it on. That's for inflammation. Ginger is for joints, whether it be toes, whether it be ankle, whether it be knee, whether it be hip, whether it be elbow, whether it be wrist, whether it be fingers, whether it be lower back. But when that ginger goes on an inflamed joint, within half an hour or an hour, the skin gets very hot. And that's an indication that it's pulling the inflammation out of the joint. So when we do it at Misty Mountain, we might do it at 6 o'clock in the evening. So at 7 o'clock we say, how does it feel? And the person might say, I can't bear it anymore, it's just burning me. So we just take it off. That's okay, because the fact that it's burning means it's already pulled a lot of inflammation out. But when they're saying that and we're taking on, we say, yeah, but how does your joint feel? And they go, oh, actually, I can move it. Because they were so concentrated on it's burning me, but that it actually doesn't. It's just that, because when you take it off, there's no redness. It's just the inflammation being pulled out of the joint. And other people would say, how does it feel? They say, oh, really good. Can I leave that on overnight? Now, I'm very careful the way I make a poultice because you don't want grated ginger all through the bed. That is no fun. But if your husband will never forgive you, but if you make it the way I described and cover it with plastic, then bandage it on with like an ace bandage and make sure it's neat. We had this girl working for us for a while, and everything she did was super fast, and she made the poultices so fast they were so messy. And I saw a lady come down for lunch one day, and she had a ginger poultice on her elbow. The bandage was falling apart. Bits of ginger one. I thought, oh dear, 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 dear. So I said to the other staff, look, please don't put her on poultices. Put her on something else. She's really good at so many other things. So make sure it's neat. I always get the neat people to make the poultices. and make sure it's on secure and that it's comfortable. But there is another one that you can do overnight. So if there's a lot of inflammation, you might only be able to put that poultice on for an hour or 2 hours. Now remember, one of the first things I showed you was the symptoms tell you where to go and what to do, but you look at response. Some people can handle it for half an hour, some people can handle it for an hour. It's just whatever the person can handle. But a great compress for overnight. So this one's the ginger. We call that a ginger poultice, and because it's fresh ginger, as soon as you've used it, you discard it. So what do you use for the cloth? Well, one of the best things you can use is just old sheeting. It's got to be cotton or linen. So my husband, he's got this great idea at home with me away. He sleeps on his side of the bed for 1 week and my side of the bed for another week. He thinks he's so clever. So he then has to wash the sheets every 2 weeks. Now, I've got sheets in the cupboard. He uses the same sheets. Puts them on the line, puts them back on the bed. So when I got home last November and I got into bed, my foot went through the sheet. He's so proud of the way he just washes the sheets so much, but they got so thin because he's using the same sheets again and again. That's the perfect sheet for the poultices. So yes, that got ripped up for the poultices. And you can do probably a really good size is about this size, because remember, it's going to come down to about that size once you've folded it over. That's a really good size for lower back, for knees. So you can rip them up or cut them up and just fold them over. It's a good idea to make a poultice box and have your cloths there so that if someone's got a bee sting or someone's got you've got it all there. So the overnight one that you can wear for quite a while is the castor oil compress. And so with inflammation in the joint, the ginger poultice can be used for maybe an hour or 2 a day, and then overnight do the castor oil compress. Now, to do the castor oil compress, you want quite a few layers, because this compress can be used again and again and again and again. In fact, when my wrist broke and it healed, then I couldn't bend my fingers. So what I did, every night I'd wear a castor oil compress. I can bend them now, but I underestimated how long it takes the tissues and the ligaments and the tendons to heal. The bone's actually quick compared to all the rest. And I was targeting where the break was. I had underestimated how damaged my hand was, because my whole body went up and just landed on there, and there was a rock under it. So that's what we targeted that, but then I couldn't understand why. I couldn't even bend my hand. So I wore castor oil every night. And I wore castor oil every night for about 6 months. And look, see, I've got total use of my hand now. And I use the same compress every night. I think after about 3 months, I changed it. So it's a really easy one. And I used probably, in the old sheeting that the foot went through, I probably used about 12 layers. So the thicker the compress, the more castor oil it can hold, and the more castor oil can go into you. And then you pour the castor oil on, and it'll sit like a bubble. And you just let it sit there. And underneath you put plastic. So that's plastic there. And it takes about 15 minutes to soak through. and then you can use it. So you put about this much castor oil on. Don't cover the whole thing in castor oil, because when it soaks through, it's got nowhere to go. And one lady told me, I'm not going to use castor oil again. I used it one night. I got castor oil all through the bed, castor oil through everything. I said, you used too much. So when it soaks through, it'll come through and make up this much. And then when it goes on your hot body, which will thin the oil even more, then it can go out that much. So I have never had leakage, and I have never had it go through the bed. And I just keep applying it. And in the morning, I just fold it over, roll up my bandage, then the next night, open it up, put it on, put the bandage on. What's that take? 30 seconds, not even that. So it's real easy. So whether it be knee, whether it be ankle, whether it be toes, whether it be hands, whether it be wrist, whether it be elbow, whether it be hip. If it's hip, it's not that easy to hold on to. But have you discovered booty? In Pilgrims, they have a whole booty stand. We nearly bought them out the other day. Jacqueline got lots of things for her sons. Yes, there's even stuff for guys. They're really stretchy. So it's just bamboo, and I think it's about 10% elastine. So if someone's got a hip problem, get the full briefs and put the Poultice on, and just put the booty undies on, because they're stretchy and they'll hold it there. Because I don't know how you're going to bandage that, and especially us ladies, we go in at the waist, you try and bandage the hips, it slips up to the waist, and so those stretchy undies can pull it into place. And we also talked about castor oil compress on breast cancer, and you can get some really nice stretchy sports booty bras. They can also hold it in place. But we've seen many people conquer the inflammation in their body, again internally, by implementing the Sustain Me principles, supplementing with the juice, and remember, the symptoms are your indication of where you start, where are symptoms. So to ascertain the cause, you look at the history, and if you want to know where to start, your symptoms are your body saying, excuse me, I need help in this area. And then you apply the ginger poultice and see. If you can't handle it, take it off and then put the castor oil overnight. So it's important to listen. In Genesis 26, verse 15, the Bible says, if you will diligently hearken, that means listen, to the voice of the Lord thy God in your body. You've got to listen. If you will diligently hearken or listen to the voice of the Lord thy God and do that which is right in his sight. You know what that is? Doing right by your body. And give ear to his commandments. They're all his laws. And keep all of his statutes. You know what the next verse says? Then I'll put none of these diseases upon thee that I put upon the Egyptians. Because I am the Lord that healeth thee. God blesses the natural remedies. Did God put diseases on the Egyptians? No, they put it on themselves by breaking the basic laws of health. And did the Egyptians have all the diseases we have? Yes. Archaeologists are digging up bones. They had arthritis, they had gout, they had cancer, they had heart disease, they had diabetes. Did you know that? It's incredible what the archaeologists are digging up and what they can do by testing those bones. Yes, they had all those diseases. Because the bigger and richer and wealthier a nation gets, often the sicker they get. Because they start to eat refined foods. They start to stop drinking water and drink too much wine, all of that. So again, it shows how when we do right by our body, when we give our bodies the right principles, the body responds. So God gives the challenge. He says, prove it. Prove it. Prove it for yourself. And once you have conquered all those ailments in your body, you are now qualified to help others. That's all the qualifications you need. Because all you have to do is say, this really helped me. I couldn't bend my hand. Now I can fully bend it. What did you do? Castor oil. Castor oil. But I also drank water. I also went to bed early. I also ate nourishing food. I also exercised every day. We're going to do some questions now. How to heal a cyst. Where's the cyst? Well, it depends where the cyst is, but I would apply castor oil compresses. I might have cysts on my liver, I might have cysts on my kidneys, but I'll never know because I'll never have a test. But everything works. So if it works, you're doing well. Is there a way to prevent ectopic pregnancy? What an ectopic pregnancy is if you remember the other day when I draw how the egg is in the fallopian tube and the sperm connects with the egg in the fallopian tube, and then that keeps travelling down the utopian tube. Don't know where utopian came from. Keeps floating down that tube till it gets into the uterus, and then it's still very small, then it starts to grow. With an ectopic pregnancy, it's fallopian tube. With an ectopic pregnancy, for some reason it is stuck there, and unfortunately it can never fully develop. How can you prevent that? That's something we don't know because it's right in the body. But what I have found is when you give the body the right conditions, when you take or start applying the yam cream, which balances the hormone, that whole reproductive system starts working better. How often should potato poultices be changed when a child has stepped on a rusty nail? Ideally, probably about every 8 hours, because that potato will draw the waste out of that, and so you want to get that potato poultice away. So we've helped many rusty nails. I've had quite a few children tread on rusty nails. I've trod on a rusty nail. We just do potato poultices. How easy is that? Because that tetanus vaccine is quite toxic, and death from tetanus is really rare. Really rare. So you tread on a rusty nail, start putting grated potato poultices. How long do you do it for? Until the foot heals. If you are allergic to onion and garlic, internal, can you still use an onion poultice on your feet? Who'll tell you?
Your body.
Your body will quickly tell you. It may be that you can, I do not know. But instead of putting a whole onion on your foot, maybe just put a couple of slices and observe. Why do some people who are on the carnivore diet look so healthy? Do you know they often do initially because they've come off a high carbohydrate diet onto a carnivore diet. And the body starts working well because they're getting those sugars down. But unfortunately, eventually, they don't always look good because the colon must have fibre to move things through. Plus, a carnivore diet is a really high acid diet. And I've spoken to some people, initially they looked quite good, but eventually they started to get arthritis, other problems. Is avocado oil okay? It is flavourless and has a high heat point, so it's nice to use. Well, if you do use it, it really should be cold pressed, and I think that it is better to use with heat because it is quite high in saturated fats. What to do with a high cortisol due to liver dysfunction? Do you know the only way that you know that there's high cortisol is a blood test? Isn't that true? So don't have the blood test. And to get the liver working well, your liver's under your right rib, you can apply castor oil compresses. Because remember, eventually it'll settle down. And there are liver herbs. Milk thistle is an excellent liver herb, as is dandelion. In my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter on the liver, and also in Self-Heal by Design. And it lists all the herbs that help with the liver. How to get rid of skin moles. There's a few ways. You could put a drop of castor oil on a couple of times a day. Little by little, that'll break it down. To get rid of them quickly, you can put a drop of oregano oil on. You call it oregano. That will burn it out because that's very strong. So you might find that that'll get rid of the mole within a couple of months, but it will get red and sore, but that's part of it, burning it out. Whereas the castor oil, it's gentler, but it might take 6 or 7 months. How can you heal your heart after a pacemaker? Well, keep that blood nice and thin by having the cayenne pepper, exercise every day, go on a plant-based diet, so all the Sustain Me principles will help. Often with a pacemaker, the person's put on medication, so I'll leave that with the person. But in my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter, Love Your Heart with All Your Heart, and it shows how the cayenne pepper is great at strengthening the arterial walls, opening the capillaries, and also thinning the blood. But we also looked at nose breathing. Remember how nose breathing maintains carbon dioxide levels, which opens the capillaries, and also nose breathing activates nitric acid, which is also a vasodilator. Have you studied B17, apricot seeds, apple seeds, cherry seeds, and the absence of cancer in using it? Or using B17 to help cure cancer? B17 is called nitriliside, and it certainly has been used to help fight cancer. Apricot seeds contain arsenic, and when that gets into the body, it's released when it connects with the juices from the pancreas, and it goes into cancer cells and kills them. But in the healthy cell, there's an enzyme called rhodonase which detoxifies it. So yes, apricot kernel seeds can be used to help conquer cancer. What should you do to recover from a serious concussion? Time. The brain needs time to recover, so you've got to be gentle, very, very gentle on the brain, and be careful with technology. In fact, ideally when a person's had a concussion, they should keep away from technology. And being outside and letting the sun go through the eyes and viewing your beautiful mountains and snow and going as gently as possible. The brain will heal, but it needs time. Time is the best healer. Chia seeds, are they to be avoided if someone has diverticulitis? Can they create it? No, they certainly can't create it. They could even prevent it. Because when you mix chia seed with water or a fluid, they go like a soft gel. So that's very gentle on the lining of the gut. What do you recommend for neck pain from a auto accident? Again, if there's been an injury, it needs time to heal. So you have to be careful not to do anything that will hurt the neck. And also you often have to check the pillows that you've got. Your body will tell you what you can and can't do. Again, it needs time. And often seeing a chiropractor and osteopath just to check that everything's alignment can help. Also wearing castor oil compresses on the back of the neck can help. Is organic soy okay for boys with hormones? Certainly is. The only problem with soy is when it's been genetically modified and grown with poisons or chemicals. They're the chemicals that are called xenoestrogens that disrupt the hormones. Any advice on how to treat muscle twitches, like an eyebrow twitch? One of the best muscle relaxant, there are two muscle relaxants, one is moist heat and another is magnesium, and you can get magnesium oil and rub it into where the twitches are. Does Cyprium go bad after time? I've not ever known it to go bad over time. Maybe after 50 years it might go rancid. I don't know, I've never had it that long. For those, we are canning foods. What can we do in place of sugar? You can use palm sugar. Palm sugar is the crystallized nectar of the palm flower. Some people choose to use stevia. But stevia, you use very, very small amounts. If you overdo the stevia, you get this bitter aftertaste. So it's important to play with your stevia and get just the right amount. What do you recommend for swollen neck lymph nodes? Well, there's a reason why they're swollen. And when you realise that the lymph system sweeps away waste from the tissues, if the body is overloaded with any sort of environmental poisons, then the lymph nodes are going to be overloaded. And with that, you can rebound every day to stimulate that lymphatic system and just check your exposure to poisons, make sure drinking adequate water, and you can massage the lymph nodes with castor oil. Can castor oil be applied directly to skin, or does it need to be in a pack? I put it on my face and neck and feet every night to help with sleep. Well, you certainly can do that, but it's so sticky and it can take sometimes 15 minutes to absorb through. And I think it might get all over the sheets, and that would be hard to get the oil out of the sheets. But you could rub it into these areas and not go to bed for another half hour. You might find by then it's soaked in. Or you could rub it on your feet. Not food, no. Rub it on the feet and maybe put socks on. That would protect it. And that's the beauty of a castor oil pack, is you can get more oil into the body in a pack. And because it's covered with plastic and bandage, then you don't get mess on clothes or sheets. What can heal eye disease, bulging cornea, keratosis? Castor oil. This castor oil sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So with the castor oil in the eye, you can either put a drop in the eye or you can put a drop on your finger and wipe it over the eyelid. Either way, it'll soak through. What should I do if doc found mass on both kidneys and wants to do a biopsy? I would not biopsy because that damages it even more. No biopsy, but what you can do is you can put castor oil compresses on the kidneys. I've been on antibiotics 3 times, ended up with in ICU with severe sepsis. Now having a PICC line. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear all that. It sounds like you need to keep away from doc. And look at my book, Sustain Me, where I've got a chapter on the kidneys, and it shows in there everything that you can do to help the kidneys, the foods, obviously a more alkaline diet like we looked at today. Also, because the kidneys filter the blood, when you're on a more acid diet, that puts a load on the kidneys. And there are kidney herbs. Corn silk tea is a great kidney herb. Tennis elbow, help. Ginger poultices. Maybe ginger poultices for an hour in the evening and then castor oil compresses overnight. What can be done for alopecia? My hair has been falling out since the start of menopause. Students, what does that indicate?
Hormone imbalance.
Hormones imbalance. Well done, students. You're listening. There's a chapter in my book on alopecia, and I do show how many ladies have found in pregnancy, sometimes their hair falls out, sometimes in menopause, so balancing the hormones is important. Can you reverse vision loss? Bad eyesight. Do you know it's important to work the eyes? So my eyes aren't 100%, but I really work them. And because I work them, I've been able to maintain my eyesight. There's a book called Better Eyesight Without Glasses by Dr. William Bates, B-A-T-E-S. He nearly lost his license over that book. But in my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter on eyes, and I have his book listed there. So remember, the more you wear your glasses, the weaker the eyes get. Obviously, if you can't see very well when you're driving, you've really got to wear glasses so you don't crash the car, you know. There's a bit of common sense there. But his book shows how you can strengthen the eyesight. I rarely get sick. Is that normal? We've forgotten what normal is. Could it be a suppressed immune system? Oh, I don't think so. I think I'd just rejoice. What to do for neuropathy in fingertips and toes? The cayenne pepper compresses. And they are explained in detail in my book, Sustain Me. And they can be worn probably about every second night until you've got the pins and needles coming and the feeling coming back. You have been talking a lot about high-intensity interval training. Can you talk about the rebounder and the benefits, please? Well, we did talk about it tonight and how effective it is on the lymphatic system, and you certainly can do high-intensity intervals training on the rebounder, jogging on the rebounder, or just leaping high on the rebounder. You'll get high intensity. And then for your recovery, this is the health bounce, just doing that. Or you can get off and then do some stretches, so you certainly can use the rebounder. The rebounder is the only type of exercise that exercises every single cell in the body. There's not a cell that doesn't miss out. And I guess here in Idaho, you've got several months where you're almost indoors with so much snow, and that's where the rebounder is a great exercise to do. There's whole books on it. So you can Google that and look at that. What can I do for loose skin after weight loss? What can I do for stretch marks? Stretch marks can be eased with castor oil. Also, have I mentioned that before? Must be good. Also, vitamin E oil is very good at that. And what can happen, and you know, there are several books that show this, when you do the high intensity interval training and you cause a release of the human growth hormone, that increases circulation of the blood to the skin. There's a book called The Gabriel Method by John Gabriel, and there's a photo in that book of when he was something like 300 pound or 400 pound, and then he went down, 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 and now you could count his abs from being obese. He looks like he's got the body of a 20-year-old. He was in his late 40s when he did that, and that's how he did it, was the high intensity. And it's also losing weight little by little with really good food, lots of water, great sleep. What to do when iron is too high? It's called hematomacrosis, high iron, and it's usually a mineral imbalance in the body. So I've seen a couple of people conquer this by increasing minerals in their body, by having more greens and more organic. So it's that high iron indicates an imbalance, going on to the Celtic salt with its correct mineral balance. But also, the other person I saw conquer this was someone who was not digesting their food well, and they went on some herbs to boost their digestion. Is a person able to get off Plavix following having a stint placed? I believe so. as long as they implement the Sustain Me principles and have cayenne pepper 3 times a day. Either have a capsule 3 times a day or about a half a teaspoon in water 3 times a day. And there we have it. Good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.
Well, we hope you enjoyed it, folks, and that's our program for this evening. We do have those in the corners. They'll be accepting donations if you'd like to. Also, keep in mind if you're coming tomorrow morning, there's no meeting in the evening, but there will be one, and the doors will be open at 8:30. Barbara will be speaking by 9:30 is the plan. And then again at 11:45 or so, or 11:30. So have a good evening, have a safe journey, and God bless you.